back. This is Alex from Studio Trejo, and today we're going to review the Nikon 80-200 f2.8D AF zoom lens. While I normally review vintage manual lenses on this channel, we are making an exception, as this lens represents a turning point for Nikon's telephoto zooms. Nikon, a company that has been in the optical business since 1917, who launched their first camera in 1948, who launched their first SLR in 1959, who developed the F-mount that is still in use after 60 years, whose cameras have literally been to the moon and back, whose lenses have been used to create some of the most iconic imagery in modern history, whose dive into the digital photography realm caused shockwaves and solidified the beginning of the digital revolution. The company who took all of their R&D from older push-pull designs and put them into this 80-200 two-touch autofocus system and introduced it in 1997. In the last 20 years, 4 lenses were developed by Nikon that could have easily replaced the zoom, designed with AFS motors, vibration reduction, updated optical formulas, but this 80-200 continues to be in production. What does that mean? It means you can still buy this lens brand new as of the date of this recording for about $1,200 or used for around $600. Did I get your attention now? Why do photographers and videographers continue to pick up this lens? What makes this particular design so special? And can its optical quality still hold up with the demands of modern sensors? Let's find out by jumping into the key features of this lens. The Nikon 80-200 f2.8D autofocus zoom lens has a maximum and constant aperture of f2.8 to f22. It has 9 aperture blades to smooth out the bokeh, and it creates 18 pointed sun stars on bright points of light. It weighs 1,300 grams or 2.87 pounds, and it has a standard 77 diameter filter thread size. The minimum focus distance is 5 feet or 1.5 meters from the focus plane, which gives it a 1 to 5.9 maximum reproduction ratio. This lens has 16 elements in 11 groups, which includes 3 extra low dispersion glass elements for correcting chromatic aberrations. Unlike the modern Nikon G lenses, this zoom still has a workable aperture, allowing it to be used on older film cameras or declicked for video work. The lens also has a non-removable but adjustable tripod collar. And in case you were wondering, unlike many of its successors made by Nikon and other third-party competitors like Sigma and Tamron, this 80-200, whether you focus close or focus far, will be a true 80-200. Being an F-mount lens means it can be attached and used with Nikon cameras dating back from before I was born, and it can be adapted to the Z-mount using the FTZ adapter, which will give you aperture control using the dials on the camera just like it would on a DSLR. But this lens still uses the screw drive designed for focusing. Therefore, there is no autofocus on this lens when using it with the FTZ adapter. Now, this doesn't matter much to indie filmmakers who normally manual focus their lenses when pulling focus, but for photographers, it's kind of a bummer. But there are ways around that now, like using adapters that can focus manual lenses. I'll make a video on that in the near future. Now let's talk about build quality and handling. This metallic beast is the definition of a workhorse. It was, and still is, built as a professional grade zoom. There are rubber grips on the zoom and focus ring, with a manual to automatic switcher for the focus right in between them. Focus is fast. Maybe not as fast as its later successors, but it's still fast. If you're using it manually, it has a nice feel, but not as dampened as fully manual lenses. That's something you want to keep in mind when doing video work. It also has a focus limiter switch, an opening where you can see the focus scale, and it's painted matte black with gold letters and made in Japan. Even with its weight, it easily balances on a DSLR camera, and if you're used to holding larger lenses, you can also balance it on your mirrorless camera. Just know that this lens feels solid, and no one is going to mistake this zoom lens for a kit lens. Now let's talk about the best part of using this lens, image quality. Most lenses, not just vintage lenses, are a little soft wide open. But on this lens, you're going to have to work really hard in your pixel peeping to see any kind of softness. It's that sharp. But if you really want to pixel peep, you can find softness at 200mm wide open. I don't know why it does this, but it does. But even at that point, we're starting to split hairs. Now let's look at vignetting on this lens. There's not much to write home about when it comes to vignetting. There is some at f2.8, and by 3.5 it evens out. Stop down further and it's gone. Lens flare is just okay, with some rainbow effect when you point it at the sun, but if you compose your subject correctly, you can get some really cool effects. And the 9-bladed aperture will give you some cool sun stars. Bokeh does not disappoint with this lens. It's a zoom lens, so you're gonna get bokeh. But the constant f2.8 guarantees that beautiful out of focus background throughout its zoom range. And the colors can only be described as truly Nikon color science. You just know it when you see it. On this lens, the colors pop on the cooler side of the spectrum. The black and whites are what black and whites should be. But I'm not blind to the shortcomings of this 20-year-old lens. It lacks VR. So if you're used to image stabilized lenses, you're going to notice it. Just remember, photographers have been taking sharp images since before VR was invented. And it's heavy if you're not used to carrying metallic lenses. And on some copies, including my own, the manual to automatic switch for focus can become effective. Something with the spring mechanism no longer locks in place, leaving it free to switch on its own. Like most photographers, I just added tape to hold it in place, and it works fine. So what's my take on this lens? Unlike other vintage zooms, or modern zooms for that matter, there aren't many compromises in this lens. The image quality and build makes it a desirable piece of glass. And this lens is a keeper for me. If you find one, check it out. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you on the next vintage lens review.